Welcome to Dishing Heat with Wolfie and Big Shot Song. I'm your host, Nathan Wolf.
And I'm your co-host Max Song.
It is currently November 6th at 5:15 Mountain Time, and we're here for the fourth episode of the Dishing Heat pod. We're going to start with looking at last night's game. The Warriors played the Pelicans, and unfortunately ended up being a blowout for the Warriors. Max, what did you think about that game?
I feel so bad for Valanciunas, man. The dude's averaging 19 points and 14 rebounds on 50 and 56 splits, which is ridiculous. He's been the only one on the Pels that has really impressed me, and they've won one game, which is pathetic. And the Warriors remind me of the 73 and 9 season. They're really, really deep. Gary Payton, too, has been great and posterizing everyone when he's only 6'3". Jordan Poole has come alive in the last two games, putting up 26 and 31. Wiggins is playing great, and even Bielitsa is playing great. So because of their depth, like the Warriors just remind me of their best season.
Really like that you brought up a lot of those players, especially Bielitsa was a guy I was actually excited about coming into the season, coming off their bench. He had a nice game, which was nice because he kind of been struggling. I think a lot of the guys that aren't playing like 100% well, like Steph Curry can get better somehow. He will get better throughout the season. Same with Wiggins. Gary Payton's poster at the end of that game was absolutely nuts. But in terms of the Pelicans, man, when your two best players are injured, it's really hard to win games. Brandon Ingram has been injured for a bit. Josh Hart did come back from injury. He's been playing really nicely, actually. I believe Herb Jones got injured a few games ago. We haven't seen him. He was actually surprisingly good off the bench for the Pels. Or no, I think he was even forced to start with a lot of the injuries. But some players have just kind of been a nightmare. Kyrus Lewis is a nightmare. Jackson Hayes, not so good. There's a lot of players in this team that we thought were gonna have nice seasons, and they're not. Nikhil is currently awful. Devonte Graham is exactly as I expected him to be, which is not what I wanted, and it's really unfortunate for the Pels because as awesome as Valanciunas has played, like awesome, it's just not getting them anywhere. So then, if we look at that, then how do we look at Zion's situation right now? What do you think about Zion Williamson's situation right now?
Zion looks like a ball. He's so fat. But I'm a lot more positive on that because I think he'll lose it. A dude of that size puts on weight so fast, especially if he has a broken foot, so he's not doing anything but sitting down because he can't do any cardio. So I think he'll lose it as soon as he starts playing basketball. And but even with Zion back, I think the Pels are still going to be bad. I just don't see that team really working together very well, and I think they'll still have a very significant losing record.
I don't know. I mean, very significant because this Zion Williams is still out for another 2 to 3 weeks currently. So yeah, significant losing record is unfortunately seeming inevitable, as always with the Pelicans. Brandon Ingram is still out, and yeah, I think when Zion comes back, it is gonna change things. You're gonna have more space for Devonte Graham. I think his 3 point percentage could definitely go up because he's chucking him right now. Same with Nikhil. I think we could see better looks for those guys. Josh Hart keeps playing well. I think that the team will start to come together a little bit better, and I think when he comes back, they'll be pretty close to 500 games with him, maybe even over. But it might not matter because they're the worst team in the league right now, and it's not terribly close. They're friggin' 1-9. It's not going well for them. Um, in terms of the Warriors, though, that is a very nice situation. And what do you think about Clay being able to come back into that?
Clay isn't going to be the same in my opinion. He's going to have a worse defense. And if you've watched his shooting recently, it's changed. He has a lower and a slower release. But Clay is still going to be good. He's still going to be Clay Thompson. And as a result, I think the Warriors will still be good. I actually have a hot take. A lot of people have the Lakers coming out of the West. I have the Warriors.
Where's going the West is gonna be difficult. You're gonna need a good Clay who is really good defensively. That's the Clay that you're really gonna need. I think guys like James Wiseman, if he can come back to this team, really need to step up if they're gonna be a team we see winning the West. But listen, the Warriors have been really good. Let's not discount anything. 7-1 is not where I mean. I personally thought maybe 6-2 by this point. I wouldn't have been surprised by 7-1, but I also wouldn't have been surprised by like 5-3. So I think it's really good where they're at. They've beat good teams too because they've beat almost every team they have played. They lost one game to the Grizzlies in OT. They didn't even get blown out. That's the best part. So they got the Rockets tomorrow and Hawks, but then they got T Wolves. So I could definitely see them continuing this winning streak. Uh, so whose start now between the Warriors or the Pelicans? Whose start to the season is more surprising?
The Warriors. I thought the Warriors would be good at the beginning of the season, but like you said, I expected something like 6-2, 5-3. I didn't expect them to only lose one game thus far. I expected the Pels to be really bad though. As soon as Ingram and Zion are out, I'm just like, oh, they're not gonna win a single game. I'm even surprised that they won one game. So honestly, the Pels start isn't that surprising to me. So they're less surprising to me than the Warriors start.
I went back and forth on this one for a while because as a Pels fan, I had faith in the Pelicans, but I also had zero faith in the Pelicans. Um, I mean, the Pelicans got worse over the offseason. How that occurred, I don't know. I mean, you could argue that acquiring JV was better, but they lost Zoe and they replaced him with Devontae Graham. So maybe they're the same. Let's put it that way. But they certainly didn't get better. They also they did let go of Bledsoe in that trade to make salary cap space, which they, by the way, did not use. It's just sitting there, open money for nothing, which is that's really awesome. So I'm gonna go Pelicans here though, because they shouldn't be 1-9. It's just has not been good for them. When I've watched, they've lost games, close games, but they've also got blown out. Like they lost to the Knicks by 6. If they had BI, they probably win that game. Oh my God, they lost to the Kings by 4. That game was really frustrating to watch. They probably should have beat the T Wolves even without Ingram. They should at least had 2 or 3 wins. So I'm gonna go Pelicans here. But moving on, we have a game from a few nights ago, but an awesome game, which was Lakers OKC. What do you think about that Lakers OKC game?
This game made me so happy because Russ just choked at the end of the game. He decided to have his horrible turnovers practice like at the end of the game, like Russ always does. And Shea is a menace to society. Shea is ridiculous. Like pulling from the logo, that's crazy, and his dime to Lou Dort. So I think, yeah, the Lakers, I said in previous podcasts, I'm not that high on them. And I think my opinion hasn't changed on them. I think the Lakers aren't going to be that good during the regular season. The game was surprisingly really good. The Lakers were up huge on OKC and then they just led another comeback. The game was great.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there was no LeBron, but still with Anthony Davis and Westbrook and a supporting cast of players that's really nice there. You would think they would win this game, but my guy, SGA, oh my goodness. This guy is so beyond good. SGA had 28 points, six assists, 3 boards. I mean, like it doesn't immediately jump off, but in a win, and that's the biggest thing. And he kind of sets the tone for everything. He controls everything. And that was an awesome game. But you know what else has been an awesome game? All of the last 4 of the OKC and Laker games. Currently, the teams are 2-2 in their last 4. The 2 games last season both went to overtime. Those games were also, I believe, in the same week, within the span of maybe a few days. Same with these games. Both of these games happened in that season within the span of a week. The biggest margin of victory in any of those 4 games was 8 total. There's also like a scrappy games that from what I watched, and especially in the more recent ones, you can kind of tell that there's some animosity there. The total plus minus in these games is OKC +3 over 4 total games. That's crazy. You don't see that in so many consecutive games, so many close games. The 2 last season both go to OT. The 2 this season both huge comebacks from OKC. Could we argue this is a mini rivalry? We're not on the teams, but I would say this is a nice little mini rivalry that I've been very happy to watch over the last few years.
Yeah,
But
OKC turns into like the prime 96 Bulls against the Lakers. It's actually hilarious to watch.
it's awesome. But when we look back at that game, I think the one thing that we're really gonna focus on is that SGA half court bomb. Oh my goodness! And when we look at SGA's career, where does that rank, and what is your favorite SGA moment of all time?
I think that was my second favorite SGA moment of all time. My favorite actually came within the same game, and it happened after the half court bomb actually, and it was dime to Lou Dort. His reaction after just basically winning the game by passing it to Lou Dort for the dunk was absolutely amazing to see. His energy is infectious. He's getting the whole team hyped up. And yeah, I don't know. Just something about him just makes me feel like he's a winning player, especially with the way he's reacting to just winning a game instead of just getting stats for himself. So yeah, his pass to Lou Dort was my favorite SGA moment.
That's fair. I think when I think of SGA, I think of 3 moments. The first one I think of, the original moment, which had me so high on SGA, was his game against the Warriors in his first season with the Clippers in that playoffs. in that game, he dropped, I think, like 23 in the first half. He ended up at 25. That whole playoffs really was just really nice for him. That's like one of the moments that I always think of. His game winner last year against Charlotte, though, is going to be my number one moment. That little stop and pop mid range. I think they were tied like 107, and he gets that ball. He comes up, and it was so beautiful. That was such an awesome shot. But that bomb is gonna stick there for a while, and that was truly an awesome moment. And when we think about SGA, sure he isn't an all-star, but there's a lot of players that are kind of in his caliber surprisingly in the league right now. So I'm going to give you a player, and you're going to tell me whether SGA is better or the player is better. So first, the battle of who is the second greatest Canadian basketball player of all time, SGA or Jamal Murray.
Oh, this one's so tough for me. It's neck and neck. Statistically, they're basically the exact same with SGA averaging slightly more points. So I'd say statistically, they're basically the same player. But I gotta give the nod to Murray just because he's proven it more in the playoffs. Like bubble Murray memes, when we talk about Murray turning into prime Michael Jordan, yeah, that was true in the bubble, right? I think just because Jamal Murray has proven that he can be more impressive in the playoffs than SGA, and they're basically the same during the regular season, I gotta give the nod to Murray.
It's fair, and it's actually closer than I originally thought, but I'm giving it to SGA. SGA is younger, and not only that, SGA's season last year was absolutely insane. The stats between when he played and when he didn't play in terms of their win loss record was crazy to see. They were actually not a bad team, and then he got injured, and they were a absolutely horrific team. This is a year where he was 50, 40, 80 on 24 points per game. He also had 6 assists and 5 boards. I mean, listen, Jamal Murray's last season before the injury and his ball performance was awesome. But I'm going to take SGA because I truly think he is, if nothing else, 100% a winner, a player every team in the league I think wants. And definitely, I remember when he got traded, and I was like, oh, that's tough that you had to let SGA go because this guy is going to be a stud, and he is a stud. So I'm going to take him as the second greatest Canadian basketball player of all time. Moving on to the next one, we got SGA or Jaylen Brown.
I gotta give it to Jaylen Brown. I think SGA trumps Jaylen Brown on playmaking, but Jaylen Brown is better at everything else. He averages more points on better efficiency, and this is really what makes him better than SGA is that his defense on the perimeter is elite, and it's not talked about enough. So I think Jaylen Brown is better than SGA.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there on Jaylen Brown. The thing about Jaylen Brown is that he is just more efficient. His 2 point efficiency compared to some of the other players we look at is still really high, and his points per game over the last 3 seasons have also been really nice. He's averaging a total of 22.7 over the last 3 seasons. Sorry. This season he's been awesome in a season where not a lot of players have been, including his teammate Jason Tatum. He's right there on 50, 40, 80. Like he's a few points off from each mark. He also is still not an awful playmaker, and the rebounds are a little bit higher. So I'm gonna agree with you. I'll give it to Jaylen Brown. But next up we have CJ McCollum.
I'm gonna give it to Shea. Right now, if you just look at their stats in the regular season, CJ has slightly better stats, and he's probably sustained his statistics for a little bit longer than SJ. But I think SJ has given us every indication that he'll sustain it for a very long time. And just something about Shea is just he's just a leader. He's the first option in OKC, and like you said last year, when he was actually playing, I believe they had almost a 500 record with him. So I think as a first option, especially, he's just proven more than CJ McCollum, who's played behind Dame for basically his like significant career. So I think Shea is better than CJ.
I agree. I'm going to take SGA over CJ. It's very close to 500. I don't know if the actual stat pulled up, but they were actually a surprise team when everyone thought they were just like the season before when everyone thought they were going to be horrific. They weren't. And then he got injured and everything kind of got derailed. In terms of the CJ McCollum situation, this year CJ is playing really nicely. Again, kind of like Jaylen Brown with the star player out, CJ is playing awesome. But I still got to give it to SGA. The playmaking actually from CJ McCollum is actually really nice. He's over 4 assists in all of the last 3 seasons. And the boards are less, obviously. But no, I'm giving it to SGA. It's very, very close here, but there's just something about SGA. I agree that just he's that guy, as he said himself. The last player we're going to look at is Brogdon.
I gotta give it to Shea as well. I think Brogdon's comparison with Shea is similar to CJ's comparison with Shea, in that I think Brogdon is statistically better, but like we said, Shea is just the man and he just leads his team to wins. And yeah, there's nothing specific that I think that Shea does way better than Brogdon. He just leads his team better than Brogdon, and I think that alone puts him over Malcolm Brogdon.
I'm gonna agree. Brogdon's been nice for Indiana for the last 2 seasons, but like nothing that spectacular. Like really, he's been good. He had that 50-40-90 season in Milwaukee. He got picked up on the huge contract in Indiana, and the first season there was just not great. And even last season was like it was nothing truly that special. When you look at them, they are kind of similar in terms of the assist numbers, the rebound numbers, but it's SGA, and and Brogdon is way tougher to argue, especially when you look at their ages. Right now, I would still take SGA, and for in the future for sure SGA. But let's move on to the next game. Speaking of Malcolm Brogdon, we got the Pacers and the Blazers game. Also speaking of CJ McCollum, so what did you think about this game?
It was a great game. So the Blazers went up early, and then the Pacers led a huge comeback, and then they were up, and then the Blazers came back again in the fourth quarter, and then they ended up winning the game, mostly thanks to Robert Covington. Dude hit three huge threes in the last 3 to 4 minutes, and obviously he hit that one with 15 seconds left to put them up four. Dude had 19 points in the night while playing excellent defense, so yeah, really got to give it up to Rocco.
Three huge threes for a guy who has really been struggling this season. That's awesome to see. This was a great game for sure. The ending was absolutely spectacular. I was very excited to turn off my Pelicans game and watch the end of this one. It was way better to see. Still, Damian Lillard struggling, and it didn't matter. They pick up the win. Maybe that's a testament to how bad Indiana's been, but maybe that's a testament to how good Portland's been without Dame. They're still really putting in work, especially one guy, Norman Powell. Oh my goodness. We'll get to him in a moment, but first, what do you think about the Blazers right now as a team in their current situation? They are currently 4-5.
I think they're playing well, actually. The entire team is built around Dame, and Dame is playing at a really low clip. Everyone else on the team, though, Anthony Simons, Rocco, CJ, Nurk, they're all playing well. And I think they're pretty much going to sustain what they're going to do for the entire year. And they have the good addition of Larry Nance Jr. I think when Dame gets out of his shooting slump, they'll be a pretty good team like they always are in the regular season. They're definitely going to make the playoffs. I have them as the 5th to 6th seed. So I think the Blazers will be just fine.
Yeah, I think the Blazers, I know they're only 4-5, but if Dame figures it out, this is going to be a good team. I agree with you. When Larry Nance got traded, it was kind of, to a lesser degree the same thing I was feeling when Jordan Clarkson got traded. I was like, man, finally you're freeing this guy who's been playing really nice on a Cleveland team. And obviously Larry Nance is not the player that Clarkson is, but still, Larry Nance, I think, has been nice and will be a little bit better if he can get himself a few more minutes. The points haven't been there this season, but still, Larry Nance is a nice player, and oh my goodness, like Anthony Simons has been like awesome this season. Nurkic was nice, especially at the end of that game. Nurkic had a big bucket. Nasir Little, also a guy who I think almost nobody knows about. This guy is really young, and he's actually having a really nice season. Hopefully, he can keep that going. But the biggest guy right now, Norman Powell, averaging 18 points per game on 52, 46. 92. And can we just talk about this guy for a minute? Like Norman Powell is playing out of his mind. Last night he had 25 on 18 of 14, 3 of 4 from 3, knocked out all 6 of his free throws. And those free throws push him over that 50-40-90 mark. It's insane what he's doing right now. And when we think about Norman Powell, we think about that Norman Powell for Gary Trent trade. So who, in your opinion, right now won that trade?
I have the Raptors winning the trade. I think a lot of people are higher on Gary Trent than they should be, but I still think the Raptors win the trade. Trent is playing worse than Norman this season, but I think they are pretty similar players and types in terms of how good they are. With Trent having higher upside, being only 22, 23 years old compared to a 28 years old Norman Powell, I think both teams technically won the trade in the sense that the Blazers needed to get a player who's slightly better right now to help Dame, but the Raptors were in a semi-rebuild and needed a younger player. But if I had to say who won the trade even more, I'd give it to the Raptors.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think that the Blazers won this trade with Norman Powell. Norman Powell, once he got traded last season, he did struggle a little bit in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he was awesome. He was this close to 50-40-90 on 17 points per game. in those 6 playoff games that they played. He was exactly what they traded him for. He played exactly what he was supposed to be. And sure, they didn't get as far as they would like, but he did the best that he could. And this season, he's been incredible. Gary Trent, I think, is just beyond overrated. Being in Canada right now, the entire country is watching him with, especially with no Pascal Siakam. He's the guy. His steal numbers are awesome. Don't get me wrong. 3.1 steals is awesome. He's a great defensive player, but since he joined the Raptors, he has not been over 40% from the field in 27 games. His 3-point percentage is under 37 over both seasons, averaging this 15 points per game. I just don't know if he's that guy. Like at the point where he got traded, he was playing a nice season, still on somewhat low efficiency. He's a very streaky guy for sure, but I'm gonna give it to the Blazers winning this one on acquiring Norm. Moving on to 2 topics which are returning for our first episode. We're going to start with fantasy basketball. So today we're going to look at 1 or 2 players you would sell high on right now in terms of trading away, and 1 or 2 players that you would buy low on, either by trading or if they're still available in the free agent market. These are guys you want to go get for a low price. So who are your players that you're selling high on right now?
The player that I would sell high on right now is Carmelo Anthony. I'm going to get a lot of heat for this, but honestly, I think Melo isn't going to sustain this over the season. He's playing excellent for the Lakers. Every time he shoots a 3, it basically goes in. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I don't think Melo's actually going to sustain that over the season. He's starting off hot, but as soon as he has one of those streaks where he just isn't shooting as well, he's not going to be as well. He's going to cool off over the regular season. And I think because his value right now is so high, especially because his name is Carmelo Anthony, it's be a good time to sell on him right now.
That's fair for sure. The player that I'm selling high on is Miles Bridges. Last episode, I believe I discussed that I'm not believing in Miles Bridges continuing what he's playing, but he has played awesome. He's averaging about 32 fantasy points per game in our league. Your league may vary, but it should be somewhere in the frame. Or if you're in a 9-cat league, still, I think you ship him. I think his value is as high as it's ever going to be. Except the fact that it was awesome to draft him, but if you can ship him for a player of a caliber that he is not, because he's playing at such a high level right now, I think that'd be really awesome. Another guy, Cole Anthony. If you're not in a keeper league, Cole Anthony's definitely a guy you could move. He's playing really awesome, but he's a guy who just wasn't that efficient last year, and he's been very streaky. So I don't know if I would expect him to keep this going. I think if you could find someone who needs a point guard, that's a good guy to trade. But also, now, who would you buy low on?
How about Desmond Bain? Because his name is once again Desmond Bain, and because he's not playing on a huge market team, a lot of people don't know about this guy, but he's playing out of his mind this season for a role player. 15 points per game on ridiculous efficiency, 48-44 splits. And it's really maintainable because he's not just popping off and just like shooting every shot, right? He's playing within his role. He's playing 4 wins and he's just sustaining what he's doing over the course of the last couple of games. And just because a lot of people don't know about this man, I think it'd be a good time to buy low on him.
I agree, especially since he's only been in Yahoo roster in, I believe, 67% of leagues. If he's there, picking up definitely makes sense. He was a guy who was taken really late, and he's in the draft, I mean, last season, and he's been playing really awesome. Over 40%, sorry, from 3 in both of his last 2 seasons. My players to buy low on, as a general concept, there's like, if you can find people who are impatient with players like BI and Kristaps Porzingis who aren't on very serious injuries, who are going to come back and get back to the level, or with BI, just sustain the level that they've been at. Definitely those are guys to look at. But right now, I'm looking at Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday he's just struggled. He's currently in our league averaging a whopping 12 fantasy points per game. He's barely played. He's only played 3 games. I get that. His points per game are just way down. Like, he actually has been efficient while he's played, but right now it isn't looking awesome for him. So if you can find someone that is just confused on why he's bad and you can find a way to get it for cheap, I think that would definitely make sense. Also, going with my Miles Bridges thing, I think he'll cool down. And I think eventually Terry Rozier will get back to where he needs to be. So if you're looking at a guy, maybe go get Terry Rozier could be that guy, because he's really struggled, but I don't see him struggling the rest of the season. So if you find someone impatient with Terry Rozier, maybe even dropping him, definitely a guy to buy low on. And lastly, the other returning topic, we're looking at a 3-team parlay. Neither of us did that well. Last time, I believe I only hit 1. I think you hit 2.
Yeah, I hit 2.
But who Who is your 3-team parlay for this week?
I got 2 games tonight and 1 game tomorrow. I got Bulls to cover a spread of -4, Heat to cover a spread of +1, and I got Hawks to cover a spread of +3.5.
I like the Bulls and the Heat pick for sure. Those were two that I really considered. The Heat game just felt almost too close to bet on, so that's why I didn't look at that game. And the Bulls was definitely one that was a toss-up, but the Sixers are actually playing really nicely right now, and I think there's definitely a way they win that game. So, and plus the Heat struggled in their last game for sure, like really struggled. So that's one I'm not like super high on. My picks, I went with the Dallas Mavericks at -3 against the Boston Celtics. That is with Jaylen Brown injured and Kristaps Porzingis as probable. The Cleveland Cavaliers at +7.5 against the Knicks. That just feels like too big of a spread for a team who's actually been pretty nice. I just don't see that being covered. I could see Cleveland winning this game, but I wouldn't bet on that. And then opposing your Hawks pick, I've got the Suns at -3.5. I know I bet on the Suns last time. I don't think it worked very well for me, but this time I got faith in the Suns. So I don't know. What are you thinking about that game?
Yeah, I think the Suns are just really inconsistent right now. And something about the Hawks and Trae Young right now, their chemistry when I watched them play against the Nets was just on point, even though they lost to the Nets by like 9. I don't know, just something about the Suns just doesn't make me trust them to win any game right now, so I just wouldn't bet on them, period.
I feel like that's fair, but also I'm just looking at the Hawks' recent history. They dropped that game to the Nets, like you said. They got effectively blown out against the Jazz. They did beat the Wizards, but not by that much. And they got blown out by the Sixers. I'd rather take the Suns here. I guess we'll see. One of us is going to be right. But yeah, that's my 3, and that'll wrap up the 4th episode of Dishing Heat. Nice getting back to the weekly episodes here. The normal. We'll look at recent news and whatnot. And we'll be back next week for the 5th episode. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit up our Instagram, all the different YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you want to find this podcast, you can. And also I believe we have a website coming as well. We got places that we're gonna definitely be able to hold all these podcasts, all this information. So make sure to hit us up everywhere you can and never miss an episode or any of our takes.